and talk about, because I
Okay.
could go on and on and on about him.
You're an artist. I mean, so that makes sense. I mean, that's who you are. So you have a direct connection.
Yes, definitely. And he played a huge role in who I became as an educator. I would say right now, because I teach writing, um, it would be Amanda Gorman. Um,
Wow. Okay.
yes.
So,
Um,
so just in case, we've got somebody who doesn't know who Amanda Gorman is. Tell us why that's a name that we all should know now.
oh my God. So, the inauguration, I'm seeing all the buzz on social media and I'm seeing this young lady perform this speech. And I'm like, wait a minute. So I get a hold of the speech because I didn't see it on that day, and I get a hold of it, and I'm listening, and it's a poem. I'm like, wait a minute, Amanda Gorman, who is this? And it turns out I did research. I got on YouTube. She is the first National Youth Poet Laureate, the first female National Youth Poet Laureate, and the first African American female youth poet.
Wow. And how old would she be? Any idea?
She is 22 or 23 at this time,
That's awesome.
and she has a speech impediment, which you would not have known.
Really?
Oh, yes. So the
You
video
didn't
I
pick that up behind the microphones on the Capitol
did not,
steps.
did not. And I saw an interview of her, Good Morning America, on YouTube. And what really inspired me beyond seeing her recite a poem as the inaugural address, it turns out at age 7, third grade, she was reading a book. It was a metaphor that inspired her passion for poetry that put her in this position as a young adult, as the first national, youth poet laureate. And it just reinforced to me your gift will make room for you. So that's why I say Amanda Gorman, because as a writing teacher, author, I also enjoy writing poetry. Just
Mhm.
true inspiration to hear about her story.
Wow. And she's just beginning,
Yeah.
can you think about the what's before her to do, and she's made such an impact just in the last what is it, maybe a little over a month,
Yeah.
maybe, a little over a month, very few people even knew her name.
Yes.
And
Because on the pregame show of the Super Bowl, I'm, cleaning out my closet, just getting stuff settled, and I could hear her voice. And much like you would do with your favorite shows, I stopped what I was doing, put
she stopped
everything
you in your
down,
tracks.
and my face was just glued to that television to hear her recite that poem. And so, in a short period of time, she has definitely had that impact on me.
Yeah, that's and it's difficult to you wouldn't want to forget the fact that just what was it, two inaugurations ago, when was it two inaugurations when Maya
Yes,
Angelou stood behind that same lectern and did poetry as well, and
yes.
just thinking about that legacy that even she is in, of others who've done that before, which speaks so highly.
It's just an amazing story. And for my students as a teacher, what really stands out to me about her, it reinforces for the student who isn't necessarily passionate about athletics or passionate about entertainment, the people that we normally now see celebrated on the screen and in public. But she herself, um, she like promotes through what she does literacy, reading, writing, public speaking. Um, Students who could excel in those areas, but often the opportunities and doors aren't always open for them to do that, especially on the school level.
Hmm. Absolutely. And then if you just think in the last, I think it's been a couple of weeks now, we lost the great giant Cicely Tyson.
Yes.
and all, if you think about all of the barriers that she broke over, her career. And I mean, I look and saying, even, up until days before she passed, I mean, she was giving interviews and
Hmm.
had just finished her autobiography. And there was a certain level of, while I'm here, I'm giving back and I'm doing, and there's this responsibility to use every waking moment that I have to do and to give and I'm just, we're honored to be able to make sure we don't forget those who have paved the way for us. And again, it should happen all year,
Yes.
but definitely during this year we should not limit what we can talk about during African American History Month. It's wonderful.
So in what you're saying, one day in reading of the scripture, I came across a verse that I do think on some level impacted why I've had a growing passion for history, because it wasn't always there. And it was from King Solomon from the book of Ecclesiastes, and it simply said, "There will be no remembrance of men of old, and even those who are yet to come will not be remembered by those who follow."
Mm.
And when I thought about that verse, it just reinforced to me why it is important to remember our ancestors and our heritage. When we look at the current plight of our communities as it relates to the social injustice, civil rights gives us a blueprint on how to affect change. We did see people come out in huge numbers to make their voice heard as it relates to our recent election.
Absolutely.
And then you think about all the people who sacrificed their lives for the right to vote. We just lost the great civil rights leader, John Lewis, who was instrumental in the civil rights vote. And so
Yeah.
I once heard someone said they just kind of were tired of, as you have mentioned, this Black history only being about certain figures. And over time, I have learned that we can't tire of hearing the first this or the first that, because what that means is that barriers are being broken, glass is being shattered. And with our most recent election of our first African American female vice president,
Woo!
Kamala
Yeah.
Harris, it is a reminder to us what is possible.
Yes.
What may have seemed impossible and obvious that those doors were not accessible to us, it is more evident now of what is possible.
It is, and it is, and one can make the case it should not have taken so long for these firsts to happen, but these firsts are happening. There's still some that will begin to happen. But what I love, even as you talked about Vice President Kamala Harris, she has said, "I may be the first, but I won't be the last." And that's really about what that legacy is talking about, the saying, if I'm the first one to walk through this door, it's about celebrating me, but it's really not. And it's about saying, who's going to be the next, and help guiding our youth to being able to continue that level of excellence that has been set in front of them. So yeah, there's work to do, and to keep this going for the Black excellence that's been laid before us.
And what's interesting, because what comes to my mind in hearing you share that. After divorce, I'm living on my own, right? Got my own apartment. I refuse to pay for TV. So for 5 years, I'm just telling on myself now. I did not have access to television. I had a TV. I was not going to pay for cable was the thing. And so I remember distinctly being at Frederick Douglass High School, and the students were taking a poll. And I remember this because I was in shock when it happened. The question was, do you think Barack Obama will be nominated president of the United States? And I said, no, I don't. In my lifetime, I've never seen it. So I wouldn't think that it would happen.
Mm-hmm. Yep, because you hadn't seen it.
because I hadn't seen it in my lifetime.
Right.
So no, and I know I talk about faith and I post about faith.
But if our eyes haven't seen it, mm,
I have to see it first. And so days after he was elected, can I admit to you, I was stunned still
mm, mm.
because I remember saying, I don't believe it will happen in my
Wow.
lifetime.
Wow.
So, what I was feeling on the inside was the disbelief that it had happened
Mm-hmm.
and remembering what I had said, but then also it was reinforcing to me a shift had changed in the nation, that we have finally gotten to a point where we see the value of a person regardless of the color of their skin, as Dr. King had said in his I Have a Dream speech,
Mm-hmm.
that one
Absolutely.
day our children would be judged by the content of their character and not by the color of their skin.
Yeah. And there's conversations to say, are we there yet? Did one thing mean that everything is all fine and dandy now? Well, of course not. We don't know that. But you're right. Being able to treasure these moments and see that, because I think, often our media, often we can look at, certain things and think, oh, we haven't made any progress. And that is so not true. Even the narrative, when we talk about the fact that our country has never been so divided, that's not really true too, because there have been some times in history where we have definitely been as divided, if not more. And so, what they say, if you don't learn your history, you're doomed to repeat it. We do need to learn that there have been struggles, and there were things that were done. There were trailblazers who did the work. Was it easy? No. I am always not reminded, but always remember even the role of the Black church through much of those movements, how we banded together and celebrated and really stuck together to say, this is what we can do during this particular time and keep moving. And it's 2021, but the work still continues.
Yes,
And
yes,
it will. It will.
yes. And I definitely believe that for the sake of our children and their children's children, I think we owe it to our ancestors, right? The voices
Yeah.
of our heritage. That's
Yeah.
the theme of today's show. As
Yeah.
we come to a close,
So
I,
this couldn't be the last conversation, though, about this, could it, Cortland? What
oh
are we going to
no,
be doing?
no. In
Yeah.
fact, in what you're saying, so at least once a month, Village Talk Honors. Our goal is to highlight people from our heritage, our ancestors, the first. We want to make sure that we do our part. I think in closing, and I'll let you have the last word, Shauna. What speaks to me is because of what happened before me. I consider myself privileged, a direct beneficiary of the civil rights movement. We can go into why much later. But then also, that leaves me with a responsibility to make sure my children continue to benefit from the civil rights movement, and that in what I do, they are inspired to do the same uh, for the sake of their children. But I'm curious, as we come to a close, what your thoughts are.
I think and what we're saying today in celebrating um, many great African Americans, their dedication to service in their field, whatever it was, whether it's in poetry, whether it's in television media. Um, we know we've got Black excellence right here, even with the vision and purpose.
Yeah.
It continues with Dr. Sharon, and it's one of those things that whatever your gifting is, being able to give that. And I think about Shirley Chisholm, who, of course, was the first African American woman to run for president. She says, "Service is the rent that you pay for your room here on earth."
Amen.
And being able to let our children know that this is about giving. It's about doing something with the time that you are given, however many years God gives you in your dash, whatever it is, 20 years, 30 years. Jesus only had 33, but he made a difference in the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, what do you do